Hello team, welcome to another ATP Geopolitics video with myself, Jonathan M.S. Pearce. This is Ukraine War News Update, second part thereof for the 18th of December 2024. This is a military aid video. We're going to start with the US State Department hopes that by the time Joe Biden leaves office, January the 20th, Ukraine will have enough military supplies for the whole of next year. That's the whole of 2025, in case you didn't know what year it was now. Matt Miller said, "We believe what we've already provided and will send provides them with the material necessary to fight until the end of 2025. Indeed, the Pentagon plans to use the entire $1.22 billion remaining in the USAI. So remember, US aid is split up into a number of different components. One is a presidential drawdown where they're taking stocks from US stockpiles and getting that straight to Ukraine. That's the quickest way of getting Ukraine equipment. The other thing they can do, one other thing they can do is to put orders into US, it doesn't have to be US, but US usually will be US manufacturers to produce X, Y, or Z. Problem is there that is more expensive. These things from their own stockpiles would have been bought and paid for. They would have been bought and paid for, and therefore what you're doing is you're actually moving kind of essentially free things, but you're ascribing a value to them. So when you're saying $10 million of equipment, you're moving equipment from US stocks, and if it's obsolete equipment, that's going to be decommissioned anyway. It might even cost you to decommission those articles, or they are due to be replaced by newer, better things coming in. So it's just part of that schedule. But you ascribe to it a value, and you say, well, there's $10 million. You're not actually moving $10 million from the US to Ukraine. Even in terms of value, it might have a book value of that, but it's really been bought and paid for. You might have an opportunity cost of not being able to sell that to another country if you were going to do that anyway. But when you've got, 3,700 Bradleys sitting in the desert, like you can sell them now, you're not, because people have looked at them and said, no, they're not in very good state. Greece did that recently. So actually, I don't think that opportunity cost is even particularly relevant. You're just moving stuff with a kind of a pretend value, if you like. Not all the time. It depends what it is. Like HIMARS missile stocks are going to be different from, say, an obsolete piece of equipment. USAI, on the other hand, you are spending money with a contractor to provide stuff, not for your own armed forces, but for Ukraine. So that is money you're spending, but then that is also economic stimulus for your own country. And you'll get some of that back in tax dollars and so on and so forth. Anyway, there's $1.22 billion worth of that left, the USAI, for Ukraine, and it's likely to be spent before the end of this calendar year. So that's actually just a couple of weeks. But senior defense officials now say that the Biden administration likely won't be able to use all the remaining $5.6 billion left in the PDA before the end of Biden's term. I wonder if that's because essentially there aren't the stocks in the US cupboards to give of what Ukraine might need. So it's taking time for that to be, if you're talking about artillery ammunition, there are now probably schedules in place, production capacities have been ramped up, so that I imagine there's going to be this flow of stuff through the US stockpiles and into Ukraine, and actually there isn't the stuff right there now. I would assume that they are going to try and give a bunch of Bradleys, and I would hope quite a lot of Bradleys and associated equipment, maybe some Abrams even, but it might be that 5.6 billion would be easier spent like over the course of, say, the next 6 months rather than in the next 6 weeks. That is a little bit of foresight issue. I guess the Biden administration were banking on winning the election. They won the election. There's no issues there. What the election has done is expedited some of this equipment to Ukraine such that they are getting what they want to some degree, more so than previously, where that would have been eked out over a longer period. Now the Biden administration is loading a load of equipment up before January the 20th and getting that to Ukraine. Toot sweet. So good but also issues. Now, the EU has begun to work on a 16th package already. So the 15th package was just announced. Now they're working on a 16th package of sanctions against Russia. It's this constant work that you have to do, this cat and mouse game, playing whack-a-mole with loopholes and people who pop up as being problems. So European Commission President Ursula von der Leyen announced that at a meeting of the European Parliament. Good news there. Now, the EU it continues to give assistance to Ukraine, of course. Ukraine has received 4.1 billion euros from the EU under the Ukraine Facility Programme, according to Prime Minister Shmyhal. Not enough detail about when and yeah, anyway, this year's total assistance under the Ukraine Facility Initiative is 16.1 billion. Right, okay, yeah, sorry, there is some clarity here. So, sorry. This is the $50 billion that the EU was going to give. Remember, it was all those spanners were thrown into the works by Hungary, particularly, and eventually this $50 billion euro package is going, but it is over 3 years, so 2024 to 2027, and so far 4.1 billion has gone of that. This year's total assistance under the Ukraine Facility Initiative is 16.1 billion. Is that to say that, and I don't know whether this is a calendar year or financial year, in total it's planned to provide Ukraine with 50 billion over the 3 years. So 4.1 has been received, but 6.1 is what the total assistance is a year. There's some confusion there. I don't like lack of clarity. Anyway, Ukraine continues to receive consistent provisions from the EU in terms of that 50 billion euro overall package there. Now, Ukraine are also going to receive the 46th military aid package from Poland, which is fantastic. So we have heard that Italy are going to give a package. So I announced yesterday, I announced this one in the Geopolitics one because it came out after my military aid. But Tusk and Zelensky held a joint news conference, and the value of that package is supposed to be 100 million euros. So that's significant. Poland have cooled off somewhat recently. They are in the midst of a huge upgrade of their own armed forces. They are spending phenomenal amounts buying stuff from South Korea, buying stuff from the US, HIMARS and all sorts of stuff from South Korea. They are upgrading their own armed forces, so there might be some complication with what they're doing domestically and how they're able to help Ukraine. I presume a lot of what they're previously given to Ukraine is what's being replaced by what they're ordering. And I doubt they'll be giving stuff that they've just ordered to Ukraine. It's more about getting rid of their older kit. And I don't know. Without knowing the details of the Polish military aid packages, both this one and previously, what I say is going to be pure speculation. So Max24 says in 2025, so this is next year, JEF member countries, is that the Joint Expeditionary Force? So the countries of the UK, Denmark, Estonia, Iceland, Latvia, Lithuania, the Netherlands, Norway and Sweden. So there's Nordic, Baltic, UK and others, according to the Ukraine Forum, will provide Ukraine with 12 billion euros worth of aid. I presume that's going to be stuff that's already scheduled. For example, the UK has submitted that that Ukraine will receive, was it 3.5 billion pounds worth of equipment this next year? I can't remember the exact numbers, but anyway, that's already been given. So I presume this is like looking at those constituent members of this kind of new setup and what they are due to give to Ukraine. Fearful of the forthcoming Trump presidency, NATO has taken over responsibility for coordinating military assistance for Ukraine. So I presume this is like the Ukraine Defense Contact Group, the Ramstein meetings. It has been, NATO have been wanting to take over because they've been worried about the Trump presidency, and Lloyd Austin in the US refused. I presume because they had faith that they would win the election. Now that hasn't happened. It appears that NATO is picking up the role of administering and coordinating aid to Ukraine. So the NATO Mission Ukraine HQ, NATO Security Assistance and Training for Ukraine, or NSAT2, is already fully operational. And now, speaking of NATO, Mark Rutte, the Secretary General for NATO, has had a call with Emmanuel Macron. He said himself he spoke to Macron about support for Ukraine and allied defence production and spending. So hopefully more to come from those two. Germany to Ukraine talks about how there's been a major turnaround in the case of the Slovakian-based essential German repair and maintenance hub for the Ukrainian military equipment. In October, it was announced that the hub was to be expanded. Now officials are saying that the hub is to be completely closed. And this is almost certainly to do with Slovakia and Robert Fico making moves away from Ukraine. This was reported by the German press agency, while a spokesman for the Ministry of Defense confirmed this upon inquiry. The repair and maintenance hub, where Ukrainian heavy weapons systems such as the Panzerhaubitze 2000 self-propelled artillery systems, the Mars 2 MLRS, so those are basically equivalent to HIMARS, but the tracked version. Gepard Spag, self-propelled anti-aircraft guns, and ATF Dingo 2s were previously maintained and repaired. That's to be completely dismantled by the end of the year and relocated to Germany. So Slovakia, the thing about Slovakia there is that is economic stimulus. It's not that Slovakia is, I presume, spending money on that place. Once it's up and running, that is then going to be funded by maybe that EU funding coming in or whatever, or by Ukraine themselves, where they send their equipment to be repaired in Slovakia. That's going to employ people, that you're going to have supply chains in Slovakia. That's now going to be dismantled and sent to Germany. That's going to be good for Germany and bad for Slovakia. So, Robert Fico, go and take a long walk off a short pier. Officially, the reasons are said to be the changing conditions and the sometimes extremely complex repair work that had to be carried out on the damaged vehicles. The changing conditions being that, Robert... translated, we have run out of patience with Robert Fico and his stupid pro-Russian government, says someone here. Germany to Ukraine says, honestly, I don't understand. The Slovakian Minister of Foreign Affairs, Blanar, said on the 11th of October during the joint press conference with his German counterpart, Annalena Baerbock, that the hub will be expanded and 2 months later, everything will be closed. So trying to work out exactly what's going on there. As this other person says, praise the Steph, is that, or Ilef? Like I said, they've run out of patience. The repair hub never really worked properly. The Slovak government of Robert Fico did not react, did not communicate, simply sabotaged it. Just look at Fico's recent scandalous remarks about Ukraine. He said some more stuff out today as well, Fico, that a nice Munich awaits them. How can anyone say that, especially the successor country of Czechoslovakia, which experienced Munich betrayal and subsequently collaborated with the Nazis? It's just, Slovakia has been an absolute letdown under Robert Fico. If there are any Slovakians watching, please let me know what your thoughts are. I know that Rob, that I met in when I did my talk in North Hampshire, he's married to a Slovakian. I think she was born Czechoslovakian, but anyway, Slovakian now. But when she went back to Slovakia recently, when they went back, I correct me if I'm wrong, Rob, but she was saying that the amount of disinformation that her own family had been a victim to was staggering, and they'd be regurgitating that kind of Russian narrative stuff, and it's about 50-50 it looks there, and you just think, wow, this is what happens when you have a country that allows that disinformation in. If the government is aligned with, so Hungary and Slovakia, if your government is aligned with Russia, then you will just give a free pass to Russian disinformation, and that then churns its way through the population so that they eventually come on board with your way of thinking. It's just simple brainwashing. Right, talking of Rheinmetall, the German concern Rheinmetall and German sort of repair work and whatnot. Well, Rheinmetall has been awarded a contract by Ukraine for the provision of tens of thousands of propellant charges for 155mm artillery systems worth about 9 million euros, with delivery to take place in January of 2025. So that's really good news. But it's actually, I think, more nuanced than that, or more important than just put an order in. Euromaidan Press says, beyond immediate battlefield needs, the deal is part of a broader strategic collaboration that includes plans for domestic weapons production in Ukraine, highlighting a shift away from crisis response. So we're at war, quick, we need everything, to sustainable military self-sufficiency. And this is what Ukraine need going forward, their ability to stand on their own 2 feet and provide their own army with their own equipment. And Rheinmetall will be a massive, massive part of that. They've really been at the forefront of Ukraine's domestic production and repair and general procurement and provision. Ukrainian ground drones get jamming resistance fiber optic control. The Dronarium team showcased new fiber optic control systems for both aerial and ground drones, making them immune to electronic countermeasures. Interesting. So we have seen a lot of UAV, a lot of drones, aerial drones, particularly with the Russians doing this, using fiber optic cabling so that they don't have electronic warfare interference. Well, it's not just the Ukrainians working on those UGVs. Here we have Rostet's Kurikel UGV that can be used for transporting ammunition and cargo, reconnaissance and fire support. Okay, that's a new UGV they've got there. It seems to be working fairly well. But then when we come up here, they presented a version of the Depesha UGV with fiber optic cable. So the Russians are also working on these UGVs with large spools of fiber optic cabling that will be unable to be electronically interfered with. That is, a whole load of UGVs going on there. The Russians seem to be working hard at UGVs, as indeed are the Ukrainians, but they're both fighting to be ahead of the curve there. Now, finally, it turns out that we keep hearing news about what Russia's given to North Korea for those troops, and it turns out they've given everything from oil, gas, energy, potentially nuclear technology or weapons technology, talk about jet fighters, talk about everything down to a bag of assorted nuts and some containers of fluff and some lollipop sticks as well. I mean, it's just everything. Now, Knoll Reports is reporting that, according to a report from the New York Times, Putin reportedly paid Kim Jong-un up to $6 billion for weapons and soldiers sent to the Kursk region. Kim received approximately $315 million for sending 11,000 North Korean soldiers to Kursk. Interesting there. And, add that to the other stuff that they have been given, supposedly. Who knows exactly what it is? What you would want is Kim to recognize, a bit like China and India, recognizing that Russia's in desperate straits, right? And you can really, go for a hard bargain there against Russia because you're in a commanding power position. Kim Jong-un here can say, well, you want our troops, we demand, did you say 1 billion? I actually meant 100 billion. What are you going to do? You either want our troops or not. So I reckon Un could do a useful one for Ukraine, in as much as they could bleed Russia for as much as possible here, which in the long run hurts the Russia's ability to continue to prosecute the war. However, of course, what they're getting for that is their ability to continue prosecuting the war in a form of soldiers. So, Russia has more ability, it appears, to pay money than to pay troops and to pay for the war in Russian lives. And so their calculation is, we'll pay North Korea to provide those human lives, and then it won't affect my popularity, says Putin, back at home. It won't affect the economy back at home so much, although we're extracting money. If I was Putin, I would just offer oil and gas as much as I could, because that, I can pump that far more sustainably out of the ground than I can, use up my reserves or use money that I need to operate the country, etc., etc. Anyway, that's just my tuppence. Far be it from me to advise Putin on what to do to beat Ukraine. Okay, thanks for watching. Take care, guys. Really appreciate your support. Please check out Car for Ukraine. We are continuing to fundraise for that. We have moved up from 20 to 30 grand, and now we are as a target, and now we are almost 23,000 euros. So that's amazing. Let's keep going. Take care, guys. Please like, subscribe, and share, and I'll speak to you soon.